Yes, team, welcome to the podcast. My name's Ollie McCarthy, and this is The Wild Path. Today, we're going to be talking about fasting and walking and why I think this is an absolute game changer for busy men and dads to help them get in better shape, as it is pretty low impact and pretty easy to implement. To give some context, I'll kind of run you through my story. Now, been very physically active for a long period of time, kind of comes part and parcel with my job as a trainer. And when I had my son, I almost refused to let myself adapt and change just because I almost had this perception that I shouldn't let it change how I was living and what I was doing, which essentially just led me to 8 months to a year of trying to carry on as normal, ignoring all of the warning signs that I was fatigued and that I couldn't actually do what I had previously done, and having space of time where I was getting injured, getting ill, or just getting really, really fatigued. Anyway, this all came to a bit of a head when I kind of got to this point where I was like, this is not working for me anymore. And it actually took a little bit of self-reflection and time for me to work out that I was just continually digging myself into this hole of fatigue, and that's why I was getting injured so much, and that's why I felt so broken and mentally drained the whole time. So I realized I needed to strip things back. And this is where I began to kind of implement this fasting and walking routine. And that came about as a result of me wanting to get in better shape. I kind of let things slide a little bit for my own personal standards and I wanted to improve things. However, the old way of me getting in shape would be just to exercise more. And to be honest, that was not really an option because the more I exercised, the more fatigue I built. And obviously, as you will well know, having a young, well, if you do know, if you do have a young family or have had a young family, you know that there is stuff that comes up the whole time that you cannot control. Teething, they get ill when you've got to go and pick them up from nursery, a sleep progression, all these different things that then affects you and then would potentially affect your workout or what you're doing. And actually, I just came up with like a really simple way of being able to get in better shape, which has kind of worked for me. And it fundamentally works around fasting 16 to 18 hours a day and making sure I'm walking 10,000 plus steps. And these two simple things, I know if I can do them continually for a long period of time, I'm getting in better shape every week. Now, obviously, yes, there is some nuance with that, and there are some caveats and some ways it doesn't work, and some people it won't work for. But if you're time poor and you need simplicity, this I've found is really, really effective. We'll get a couple of caveats out of the way because I feel that this might have already triggered a few people being like, that's not going to work for me. Number one is I think this is much more applicable to men, and I think it may not be suitable for some women. I know that there's some science about how fasting actually causes more stress for women than it does help them burn fat. So actually, the kind of cortisol production can offset any benefits they might have got. So it may not be suitable for some women. However, I do know some women that it is very suitable for and it works really well for them. So again, I would say if you want to give it a go, find out and see if it works. If you're working out regularly in the morning, it will also be a lot harder to adhere to unless you are willing to swap the fasting period round. So you're doing it overnight in like from the afternoon into the evening and overnight, as opposed to from your last meal through to like midday or whatever. So it might not be worse or might not work quite as well if you're a regular morning workout person. I think it's a lot harder for people who are endurance based um, to do. So when I'm in periods where I'm doing a lot of running, it's not something I would particularly advise. But I'd say the main thing is just make it work for you. Do I do this 7 days a week? No. Quite often I will do this 5 days a week, and the other 2 days I will eat a little bit more normally because on the Tuesday I do a morning run club. So by the time I get back from that, I'm hungry, and if I don't eat, which I have done in the past, by about mid-morning when I'm doing clients, I'm feeling absolutely flagging. The other day is a Sunday where I normally do my longer run. And so again, I will go into my longer run and usually be having some gels or something like that. And by the time I get back, I will then want something to eat because it's quite a big energy expenditure. However, if those caveats don't apply to you, then this could be a game changer for you. And I'm going to take you through why I think it works really well. On the nutrition front, number one, it is very easy to manage. And I would say this of like rule-based eating in general versus tracking. Now, if you're using a calorie tracker, great, more power to you. However, if you're very busy, you've got a lot of stuff on, then just having a rule to follow, aka don't eat, it's a lot easier than having to work out, what you're eating and this many grams of this and then putting it all together. It's just a layer. Tracking is just a layer of complexity, and fasting is just a layer of simplification. So if you need simple, then simply not eating for a period of time makes that decision a lot easier because it eradicates the decision. I found if you're very busy in the morning, it's quite easy to just like not have to think about it, and it actually makes you a little bit more productive. So rather than having to think about getting up and having something to eat and then, washing the bowl up and all of that jazz, you can literally just go straight into your morning. So whether that's just you get to work, you do a little bit more work early, you get nice and busy, and then you fast through to whatever time your fasting window ends, whatever time that 16, 18 hour window ends, that can be a really good way of implementing that. If you're a regular coffee drinker as well, that really helps because caffeine is somewhat of an appetite suppressant. So from what I do, usually I have majority of my clients in the morning. So I'll finish eating by 7 in the evening, go to bed by 9, wake up early, go out for a walk, have a coffee, make another coffee to go to the gym with, go and do my morning clients. And but then normally by the time I'm finished clients or are about there would be around the time that I would eat. But usually I'll train and then eat after. Another way it makes it a lot easier to kind of manage is that it's a lot harder to overeat across 2 meals than it is to eat across three plus snacks. And what I've found from a appetite suppression standpoint is that actually if I don't eat in the morning, I'm less hungry. Whereas if I eat, I'm then hungrier throughout the day. So I find if I just don't eat in the morning, I don't really get that hungry. And then I have kind of 2 meals, that kind of late morning, midday meal, and then my evening meal. And then I might have a snack in between. But all it does is it condenses that eating window. So whereas normally you might wake up and eat at 8 a.m. or your last meal might be 8 a.m. So you've got 12 hours of eating. By condensing it by 4 hours, it makes it much more manageable to stay in a deficit. So again, if we're thinking about someone who's very busy, in terms of simplification, if you're the average bloke who burns through 2,300, calories, if you have two 1,000 calorie meals, which are big meals, if you have two 1,000 calorie meals, you're at 2,000 calories for the day. and actually that then puts you in a deficit. So you can have two decent meals, which again I've found that is really good in terms of satiety and not being hungry. I found that works a lot better than having three smaller meals. And again, you can split that down even further. You could have two 800-calorie meals and 400 calories of snacks or whatever. But in terms of if you're not super hot and wanting to track food, actually it's a lot harder to overeat on just eating two meals than it is if you were to eat three normal meals. So I think from that standpoint, it's really useful. And then all I've kind of done is replace that morning meal with coffee and electrolytes. And another thing is that actually I found neurologically, from a concentration point of view, from a clarity of thought point of view, and energy wise, I feel better. Now, I think some of that is because drinking some caffeine. Some of that is because I'm not having any early carbohydrates, and I've always noticed that that has impacted how sleepy I feel. So if I have a very high carb meal in the morning, I feel very tired straight away. I'm also making sure that I'm staying on top of my hydration because I'm drinking lots of water in the morning. So I actually find that it's beneficial and I feel more productive and I feel more awake and alert and able to think. It's often my most creative time. So I found from a productivity standpoint, that's really useful. And I think if we delve even deeper into it, actually, it's a really good habit to practice. I mean, I think fundamentally we were probably made to fast. You know, we have an abundance of food and food availability now at our convenience. So we can eat the whole time if we wanted to. And actually, the way that humans are designed was not to do that. We probably would eaten one or two meals a day or a snack and a meal. So actually, if we begin to shift things back to the way that we're designed to live, I think there are some greater benefits with digestion, with alertness, and I think some kind of fundamentals to human health. If we look at autophagy, which is getting rid of cells that are no longer needed, and regeneration of cells, which only comes when you're in a fasted state, that can be really, really useful as well. And then the kind of final point on fasting is actually it's just doing something hard. And I know that it's self-imposed, but actually doing something challenging gives you some confidence in your ability to do hard stuff. And I think that's across the board, whether that is fitness or having difficult conversations or whatever that is. But I think in doing something that is not easy, you can take confidence in your ability to do things that are uncomfortable. And even if that is just having periods of fasting, I think that's really, really useful. Kind of final point on this is actually, if you're in a family environment, it can be really useful to tie dinner in with your kids and actually eat as a family. I know, again, make this work for you, doesn't have to happen the whole time, but if you're eating early, so we feed Ezra around 6, so we tend to have a meal as a family then. That then means we're finished by 7. That then starts the fasting window for me. So actually, it's one of the reasons why I found it quite useful for us to eat earlier, because then it means you feel good, you feel comfortable and satisfied, you go to bed, and it's kind of reduced in that sense, rather than just pushing meals back and then feeling like you've got to stay up even later and have food later, have an evening. I'm not saying you have to do it the whole time. We don't tend to do that at weekends as much, but actually throughout the week, just having dinner with your kids, or if that's an option for you, that can be a really good way of being able to implement that in a family setting. So that's kind of taking the fasting element of it. We're now going to talk about the walking element. Now, obviously, how I kind of talked about earlier was one of the problems I was finding actually was managing my energy was very difficult because I was continually expending it with these big workouts. So to give you some context, because I'm a PT and I literally live in a gym, I would be hitting 4 to 5 workouts a week, probably normally five, sometimes up to six. And that, for a long time, worked for me until it didn't. And it didn't when these unexpected things were coming up the whole time. And I was going through periods where we would have 6 hours of broken sleep. And then I would go and do a mammoth training session and then feel even more fucked afterwards. However, what I found was that actually walking was something I could always do. Relevant, irrespective of how I felt, it was something I could always do. It was something that didn't have a huge stress and energy demand on me. But when I put it into the bigger context of what I was doing, it had a fairly big effect on energy output. So being able to regularly walk has a very low stress input physically. So it doesn't, you don't, I wouldn't say I get particularly stressed by it, when you're looking at it versus, say, a run or a workout. So it's something I could always manage. So even when I was having those days where I've had limited sleep or broken sleep or high stress, I could always get out and I could always walk. And more often than not, I could always hit 10,000 plus steps. So whereas at the end of a workout, I would one, feel flagging, but two, feel really hungry. If I was just focusing on walking more, I wasn't feeling flagging and I wasn't feeling that hungry. So it really fit in well with the fasting element because I wasn't, causing an increase in appetite, but it was having an effect on my caloric output. Another thing that I found really useful was it can just be chunked throughout a day. So I didn't need to wait for an hour plus to be able to go and do it. Like today, had 2 clients, had an hour long break, knew I needed to get a few bits for home. So went out, took myself on like a 20, 30 minute walk, got some bits, then went back to the gym, then was ready. If it was a workout, I would be having to get changed really quickly, having to go do my workout, then having to think about the fact that I was going into the workout feeling fatigued and also probably hungry, then having to go and shower. And there's all these elements that can be quite restrictive when you are busy, whereas actually just going out for a 20-minute walk is quite possible. And I think in most work environments, unless you're sat in a meeting, being able to park your car a little bit further away, being able to go for a coffee, being able to walk down and grab something or go out for lunch are all ways you can increase your activity without actually having to find big chunks in your day. So it's ways you can build that overall movement into your day. Now, the next point is the kind of longevity piece. And this is something I've noticed with my older clients is the ones who are in the best health and the ones who can do the most are often people who do quite a lot of walking. And I think if there's something you want to be able to retain for as long as possible, it is being able to walk and being able to walk long distances and being able to have the mobility and strength to be able to get out and about. So, from that context, putting more effort into doing a lot of walking, I think, is a really useful thing in the grand scheme of things. And obviously, being able to walk now and being able to walk a long way now will build into the future and what you can do then. So, when we're thinking about the longevity piece, whatever we're squatting, whatever we're lifting, whatever we're carrying now, we're not looking to be able to continually build that into the future. We're looking to be able to retain it for as long as possible. So if you're hitting 15,000 steps a day now, the idea is that when you're 70, 80, 90, you'll still be able to get 8 to 10,000 steps, for example. So being able to have that longevity piece is really, really important as well. So not only are you thinking about your health and fitness now, but also you're thinking about it in 20, 30 years' time. So we're increasing movement, we're increasing our output, which in effect is going to increase the amount of calories that we burn as well, just through that general movement without having to think about tracking our workouts. And to be honest, like when I look at the way that a lot of people work out these days, I think you would get more out of making sure you hit 10,000 steps a day than actually doing some of the half-assed workouts I see in the gym. And actually, probably if people just took a brisk walk for half an hour with most of what I see, that'd probably be better and they burn more calories than the 5+ minutes I see people resting in between sets. Because I think you'd be surprised that if you went out for a fast walk versus what I see people doing in the gym, that the caloric output would pretty much be the same. So I've kind of gone through the benefits of fasting, why I think it's important, the benefits of walking, why I think it's important. And then you kind of get this really nice alignment of having a low impact, but way of being able to increase your output and a way of being able to decrease your input that really works well and easily. And the result of that is a caloric deficit. And we know that a calorie deficit is what you need to be able to lose weight. Now, all of this stuff you can track. And if you're stuck or it's not working, I would advise you do that. However, just to get started, I think being sensible around your food, make sure you've got protein, half your plate is veggies, and then having some carbs. Have that twice, and you're pretty much going to be good. As long as you're not mixing in high calorie sauces or eating lots of cheese or dairy or really high caloric input stuff within both those meals, you should be pretty good. If you stick to proteins, veggies, some carbs where needed, and some healthy fats, then you pretty much can be golden. You might not even need to track your calories. However, if you're finding it's not working or you want a bit more of a kick, tracking your calories is an even better way of being able to do both. But like I said, if you just need a rule to follow, then start there and then you can adapt bits of it if it's not working. So you can increase your steps by 2,000, or you can just make sure you're eating veggies and protein. That would be two ways of being able to do that. But it's a really useful thing to be able to fit around a busy lifestyle and having busy days because it just simplifies stuff without needing to really delve into the details unless you want to. It requires minimal thinking. And then if you want to step it up another level and you have a bit of time to do a few workouts, then it pairs really well with just doing, 2 to 3 workouts. And I'm literally talking here like half an hour workouts, whether that's at a weekend, in a lunch break, something like that. That's kind of what I've been doing for like a good few months now. 5 days a week I fast, 16 plus hours. Usually I hit a 4 to 5 mile run once in the week at the run club. I'll hit a full body workout, then I'll do a long run. And that's literally all I've been doing at the moment. And then just making sure every day I'm getting out, walking. Bonus points if you've got a dog, because it means you've got to go and do it. So in the morning, I know I've got, you know, 4 to 5,000 steps done before I've even gone to work. I then park my car further away, which is an extra 10 minutes of walking, which is an extra 1,000 steps. And that's 1,000 steps there, 1,000 steps back. So without even thinking about it, I've got to 6 to 7,000 steps. Then I just know a little bit more walking around, go and grab a coffee or go and get something from the shops, another 1,000 steps. And it's just staying active throughout the day, usually running around after the little fella at home, bring that step count all the way up, and just always being mindful about walking around, taking more, uh, moving more. That for me can be a game changer if you're super busy, or you don't have a lot of time, and you want to get in better shape. So, key points again: fasting 16 to 18 hours every day, walking 10 plus thousand steps every single day, 2 meals, again, good, clean food, good source of protein, a lot of veggies, some carbohydrates, like a fistful of carbohydrates or a handful. If you want to reduce it further, just do veggies and protein for lunch and then include the carbs in the evening. And that should be golden. You do that for a month, I guarantee you will see massive results. And a bonus point if you can add 2 to 3 half-an-hour workouts in. Let me know what you think. If you give this a go, let me know how you get on. I'll catch you in the next one.